Hello, here's some terrible piece of shit news. You stupid news, you! After a Black Friday mall shooting in Hoover, Alabama, police quickly shot and killed the suspect in a heroic victory for the good guy with a gun we hear so much about. Hold on, correction. After a Black Friday mall shooting in Hoover, Alabama, police quickly shot and killed the wrong man by the name of Amantic Bradford Jr. after he was absolutely seen brandishing a gun and heightening the sense of threat after the shooting. Oh, hold on, correction. After a Black Friday mall shooting in Hoover, Alabama, police quickly shot and killed the wrong man after he was possibly brandishing a gun, depending on your definition of the word. However, the police cannot say with certainty if that's the case. But he definitely had a gun because he was a vet with a gun permit who was trying to help people after the shooting and was then shot by the police for being a good guy with a gun. Also, a lot of other mall goers also had guns, but this one person was singled out by police for some reason. This happened not long after the death of Jamel Roberson, a security guard who on November 11th detained a bar shooter before being confronted by a police officer, given a verbal command, and then was fatally shot only 5 seconds after that command was given. This is all despite everyone in the bar screaming that Jamel was a security guard, something the officer ignored for some reason. So, just to recap, in the month of November, there were 2 different examples of, quote, good guys with guns being accidentally shot by police simply for exercising their constitutional right to protect themselves. Do I have that correct? Hey, Breitbart, care to change your headline to something about these men being Second Amendment martyrs? No, just a correction at the bottom of the page. The first paragraph still describes a good guy with a gun shooting and killing an attacker. Okay then. What about you, NRA? You want to speak up about these men being killed for legally using firearms for protection? No? I guess you're just being shy. You know how the NRA can get shy sometimes when talking about gun rights? Like, remember when Philando Castile, a father and school cafeteria employee, was shot point blank by police after telling the officer he legally possessed a firearm? The NRA was very shy about that too. So shy that when people pointed out how oddly shy they were about it, their spokesperson blamed the small amount of marijuana found in Castile's car as the reason for their lack of support. Because obviously, the NRA does not support criminal activity in relation to Second Amendment rights. Obviously. Incidentally, the officer who shot him said that he feared for his life when he smelled marijuana, something that should only make you fearful if you smell it because you just smoked it and you're near a police officer, because they'll shoot you if you're black. Oh, and here's some more news. The NRA is racist. Also, this is news. Gun culture in general is racist, and it always has been. When the US got its first surge of immigrants, state concealed carry laws were amended to give local authorities broad discretion over who was allowed a permit. White people. Despite being typically against restrictions, this was completely supported by the NRA. Similarly, when the Black Panthers started exercising their right to carry firearms, the NRA chipped in to get the Mulford Act passed, something specifically designed to target African Americans. Even Martin Luther King Jr., a good guy who would be later killed by a bad guy with a gun, was denied a permit for a concealed firearm right after someone bombed his home. And sure, you can argue that the NRA used to be more reasonable about gun control regardless of race, except they've since devolved into an organization willing to signal boost every attempt at regulation or perceived attack on gun ownership, with the exception of these black men shot by the police. And frankly, if you happen to be a supporter of the Second Amendment, this should piss you off, because when the largest organization claiming to be on the side of Second Amendment rights is suddenly cherry-picking their battles based on race, it starts making people assume they're, packed full of shit. Take, for example, the Oath Keepers, a group of heavily armed but super hilarious white people who, according to their own webpage, are a nonpartisan association who pledge to fulfill the oath all military and police take to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. One example of this defense was the time they assisted the aforementioned Cliven Bundy during his standoff with the federal government after he refused to pay fines or remove his cattle from public lands. They protected a man who broke the law because they believed that the government was overstepping its power. Based on this, it would stand to reason that they would also be involved in protests such as Ferguson or the Dakota Access Pipeline, but you would be wrong. In fact, during the pipeline protests, the Oath Keepers not only avoided support, but wrote multiple blog posts spreading weird conspiracy theories against the protesters. In the case of Ferguson, there's a fascinating Rolling Stone article about a single member who attempted to reach out to Black Lives Matter protesters on behalf of the Oath Keepers, even suggesting that the group hold an open carry march and teach residents how to exercise their Second Amendment rights, but was then quickly scolded by his fellow Oath Keepers for the attempt. When he pushed the issue, he was sent a reprimand by the Missouri chapter that accused him of, quote, doing MLK impressions. Because standing up against authoritarian overreach by the government only actually matters when it's amidst and in service of your fellow honkies. One especially telling detail is when the rogue Oath Keeper expressed complete shock over hearing that most of the black men of Ferguson believed that they would be shot dead by the police if they attempted to legally carry a firearm, which, you know, not wrong. Oh, and while we're slopping up this oblivious stew of white privilege, you might want to check out the upcoming Oath Keeper funded documentary called Good Guys with Guns, which features interviews with an ocean of old white faces insisting that it's totally safe and responsible to walk around armed. Let's watch the trailer.
Schools, concerts, churches, all microcosms of governments, nations, and countries. And in each, sometimes the only way to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun.
Yes, you did just see Hillary Clinton intercut with Nazis and mass shooters in a film funded by a group that claims to be completely nonpartisan defenders of the Constitution. Let's keep watching.
Why do Big Pharma and the mainstream media hide data on psych drugs? What do they know that we don't?
They walk among us every single day.
Yes, sweet, sweet sanity is what that is. Nothing but a nonpartisan and well-edited look into the secret pharma conspiracy to demonize guns for all the gun deaths. By the way, one of the many decrepit, sane people they interview is none other than Cliven Bundy, the man from the federal standoff before who once pondered aloud if black people were better off as slaves. So, yeah. These are your self-appointed good guys with guns, America. Can't wait for those people to start showing up at our schools armed, which they want to do to protect kids. But of course, these guys are the worst case scenario. What exactly are the good guys with these guns ideally supposed to be? Well, even though they didn't talk about Jamel Roberson or Mantic Bradford Jr., the NRA did use the month of November to periodically tweet examples of good guys using guns to save the day. In every case, the story involved an unarmed assailant either breaking into property or committing a ghoulish public assault, often with some kind of crazy detail such as being nude or wearing a strange wig, only to be stopped by a usually white middle-aged guy with a firearm. In other words, the most clear-cut and unambiguous examples of a hero stopping an obvious monster. Do we have a clip? That's a scene from Death Wish 3, and whether or not they've actually seen it, I'm pretty sure it's what's running in the head of every person walking around hoping to be that good guy with a gun. But while everyone thinks they are going to be the hero, it's far more likely they are going to be this.
The police tell us a customer witnessing two suspected shoplifters trying to get away fired shots at that car as it sped off.
Yes, you might remember the woman who tried to stop a shoplifter by firing her gun in a Home Depot parking lot, which is a worse crime. And just like the NRA choose their stories, I can certainly go on about the many times a good guy with a gun did not so good. But I'd rather point you to this study by the National Bureau of Economic Research that found that allowing citizens to carry handguns seems to increase violent crime 13 to 15% by the 10th year of when the law was enacted. The reason they give should be obvious from that Home Depot clip, that the moment you give someone the power to walk around with a handgun, they suddenly become Charles Bronson, who didn't even want his camera back. He shot the guy for taking the thing, and then he just walked away without getting the thing back after he shot him dead. And so, instead of meeting aggression or a non-violent crime with a measured response, the good guy with a gun immediately cranks it up to gunfight. Because of course they do. If you're walking around with a harmonica in your pocket, chances are you are going to want to play that stupid harmonica. And so you're going to find an excuse to use it. Only in this case, the harmonica costs about $800 and is a slightly worse thing to bring to a party than a harmonica. And while the statistics are changing, currently the vast majority of people with concealed carry permits or any form of gun ownership are white men. And while not every white dude is a racist, probably, not positive, this combination is why we get news stories like these.
Deputies say Marquise McLaughlin was shot and killed on July 19th by Draca outside a convenience store in Clearwater over a parking spot for the disabled.
If you don't remember, because of all the other shootings that have happened since then, after getting into a fight over a parking space, a black man named Marquise McLaughlin pushed over a white dude named Michael Drijka, who responded by taking out his gun and killing McLaughlin in front of his wife and kids. While he wasn't initially arrested due to this all happening in Satan's dick, Drijka was eventually charged with only manslaughter, which is better than nothing, I guess? The reason I bring this specific case up is that it later came out that Drijka had been involved with at least 3 other road rage incidents where he threatened to shoot people with his gun because he had a gun, and he really wanted a reason to kill someone with his gun. Oh, also, in one of those cases, he absolutely used racial slurs, making him a racist with a gun that he really wanted to use against certain people for some reason. Here's another slightly more recent example where an old white guy pulled his gun out at a group of Muslim teenagers in a McDonald's after accusing them of using welfare cards to buy their food. Because also racist. Instead of anyone calling the police, the teenagers were then kicked out of the McDonald's for being, it says here, scared of a gun. But that's depressing as hell, that can't be right. Anyway, the man was later arrested and then released without a single charge. So, just to contrast and compare, black security guard stopping a shooter, that's gonna be one shot by the police for you, mister. White guy pulling a gun out on Muslim teenagers, no need to even call the police. And I could keep going and talk about the other recent time where a white guy shot at an unarmed black teenager asking for directions, or when a white dude pulled a gun out on black teenagers for attempting to enter the same elevator as him. Which, yes, if you're wondering, the latter also happened in Florida. But honestly, this isn't even about the guns themselves anymore. It's about the disturbing pattern of often older, often racist white people whose secret lust to be vengeful, racist Batmen is disguised by the justification of being a good Samaritan. This year, so many white people have called the police on black people doing mundane tasks that we've developed a cute meme for it. One woman called the cops on a 9-year-old child for possibly brushing up against her in a store. Another person dialed the fuzz because of the mortal terror she apparently felt when witnessing a black man babysit white children. This shit is embarrassing. Seriously, as a fellow white guy, I need to ask other white people to maybe stop using the police to tattle on minorities for non-crimes. Best case scenario, you look like a major dingus doing it, and at the worst, it's potentially life-threatening, considering the fact that the police seem to have a hard time not shooting black men when they legally possess a firearm or just are, running away. According to what little information we have on police shootings, black men are 3 times more likely to be victims than white people. And these people calling the cops over a little girl selling water or a man literally trying to enter his own apartment must know that. Because even without a gun, there's that little white Bronson in the back of their brain just begging for some action. And while maybe not all of them are racists, probably, not positive. Part of them clearly believes that they have the privilege to call the cops or whip out a gun over any argument with a minority and statistically end up unscathed from it. They have nothing to lose, and the people they are calling the cops on have everything to lose. Which is why it's so weird that the NRA has decided to ignore any black man shot by the police for illegally carrying a firearm. Especially people like Jamel Roberson, who died stopping a crime. Because despite what any of us feel about guns and gun laws, in a country where the news is overflowing with stories of black men being reported for mundane actions and unjustly shot by police, being a black person with a legal firearm is probably the bravest act of pro-gun activism you can find. So, yeah. Yay guns, I guess, is what we've landed on. That doesn't feel right, but the credits are about to roll, so yeah, yay guns. Hi, the video's over. Do the YouTube stuff. Check out Even More News, which is a podcast. Check out patreon.com/somemore-news to support the show on that platform. And